G'day and welcome to another episode of Perth Property Insider. I'm your host, Jared Mann, and today we've got Simon Pressley from Propertyology on the show. He's a property market analyst, award-winning buyer's agent based out of Brisbane. I'm getting him on for his national perspective and what he is seeing as an inevitable property boom ahead that'll end up solving the current rental crisis. So I wanted to get Simon on so that he can take us through what he's seeing with his experience, with his clients, with all of his research. It's going to be a great episode, so let's go inside.
Welcome to Perth Property Insider, where you will learn how to grow your wealth and improve your life using Perth property. Our show is brought to you by Investors Edge Real Estate, the highly rated and award-winning property management specialists servicing the whole of Perth. Now, here is your host, Jared Mann.
Hey, Simon, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. Your first time, and welcome along.
Thank you very much, Jared. Always I can talk under wet cement when it comes to property markets, mate.
Well, we're recording today, and I'm really looking forward to getting your insights because you've got a really wide view of what's happening around Australia with your business Propertyology and the research you do and all the buyers that you work with. So lots to talk about, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah. Ask me anything you like.
It's not an exaggeration at the moment to say that properties, the rental markets all around Australia are in crisis. And you're predicting that a property boom, I guess, is an inevitable thing that's going to flow from that. And I notice that you're a past engineer as well as me. So we love our numbers and love analysing things, not just going off of media headlines. So got you in today to tell us what you're seeing from all your research and on-the-ground experience. And I'd love to find out why you believe a property boom is going to end this rental crisis.
Well, unlike what a lot of economists like to think, property is not a few numbers in a spreadsheet or an index. It's people's homes, whether the occupant owns it or whether the occupant rents it. It's people's homes. They don't change hands very often, Jared. The average is somewhere between 7 and 10 years. And quite frankly, Australia does not have anywhere near enough of it. In this country's 230-year history, we have never had a shortage of housing stock in this country like we have now. Right throughout Australia, there are tens of thousands of people living in cars, living in caravans, living in tents, staying in a spare bedroom. And I'm not talking about what society might stereotype as the homeless people. I'm talking about people with stable jobs, stable incomes, good rental history, but for a number of reasons over the last couple of years, they've been forced out of rental accommodation. So a common example is the landlord has sold. So that tenant, therefore, needs to find alternative accommodation, which happens.
Yeah,
happened
we see it all the time.
For 230 years, that always happens. There'll be every single day somewhere in Australia there'll be a landlord that's sold and a tenant therefore has to move because the buyer is an owner-occupier, for example, right? So that's not uncommon. What is new here is that stereotypical tenant who now needs to find alternative accommodation can't find it. So that's how they end up in the back of the cart. Or the only thing they can find is way out of their price point. And why is it way out of their price point? Because there is no rental supply. So the very few properties that are vacant and advertised for rent, the landlord is well within their rights to charge a lot more for that because they own a premium, piece of something that someone else wants at home. So it is and what's caused this rental crisis is all three levels of government making a series of very, very poor decisions, which started way back in 2015. So we were reporting widely about the shortage of rental accommodation before COVID came, for a couple of years before COVID came. We're numbers people, and we look at evidence all over Australia every day saying, hey, the number of properties advertised for rent in this city, this regional town, is a lot less now than a year ago, and, federal government did this, the state government did that. But it wasn't a crisis then because you don't create a crisis overnight. But it was a progressive reduction in the number of properties listed for rent. And we've been putting out all these warning signs for a long period of time. But Unfortunately, instead of listening to the cause of the reduction in rental supply, they kept making more decisions that were causing it. So what does that mean? Like, rental supply is when someone makes a discretionary action and buys a property not for them to live in, but to add to the rental pool. They're doing that because they value financial independence and they recognise that an age pension and superannuation years down the track won't be enough to fund their lifestyle, and they choose property as their asset class of choice.
And this is mainly, mum and dads, not institutional investors.
Correct. And so the official numbers say that in this country of roughly 11 million residential dwellings, 3.3 million of those are occupied by tenants. So the rental pool, that $3.3 million properties, 91% of it are everyday Aussie property investors. And every single year, we need to add to that rental pool, not only because their population grows, but even if there's no population growth, which happened for the 2 years of COVID, the international border was closed. Yep. We had our lowest population growth in 100 years, more than 100 years. We go back to World War I, when Australia's population growth rate was lower. So population growth does not cause a rental crisis. But you get a teenager who decides that they've finished high school, they want to go to university, so they need that extra rental property. You get an existing couple who were married, but unfortunately they're separated now. So one couple that needed one rental property, they now need two. So every single year we need to add to the rental pool, but Australia's actually been reducing it because landlords have been bashed over the head with baseball bats by all levels of government. And eventually landlords go, we're not copping this anymore, and they sell. So when a landlord sells... It
does seem to be adding up, doesn't it?
Yeah. If you're a landlord and you sell a property, unless it's purchased by another investor, that's one property removed from the rental pool. Yeah. And that's what's been happening over these several years. So I've made sure over the years that these politicians are aware of what they've caused. Now it's a matter of when they do what they need to do. There is no alternative. Like, it's just a matter of how long can they bear the pain. You can't...
And my heart goes out to all the tenants as well, that are having to couch surf or move back in with mum and dad or, go through hard times, because we certainly want pressure on prices, and we, as landlords, we like to see rents going up, but it's at another level now where it's, it's just so painful and no one can move out of a rental into another one if they wanted to, and it's beyond what anyone would want for that market.
It's not an Australia I'm proud of, to be honest. No. We should be ashamed of it, but these people in high places that caused it still don't seem to want to listen. You cannot pull rental properties out of the sky.
Yeah.
All levels of government, it's not like they are flush with cash and they can go and build all these homes and put them onto the rental pool. In fact, they try to hide these numbers, but it's data geeks like me that discovers the truth. The number of rental properties across all of Australia that are owned by governments today only equates to 300,000 in total. 30 years ago, Jared, there was 100,000 more rental properties owned by government. So they've sold off. They've only ever owned a small portion of the rental pool, but they've actually been progressively selling off. So, and what are they doing now? You listen to every state government, the federal government, local government, they are trying to reduce costs because they borrowed to get out of the global health pandemic, right? So it's not like we can say, the government's just going to need to fund another 200,000 properties for tenants. Well, that's not going to happen.
They're not really an option to.
So where are they going to come from, my friend? Where are they going to come from? So the people with the victim mentality might say, no, don't have more rental supply. Take tenants away from being a tenant and make them a homeowner. So how does that work? Do we throw billions of dollars of cash at an existing tenant and say, you can become a first-home buyer? Well, there's actually more federal and state government grants available for first-home buyers now than ever. And in fact, the last 3 years, the number of properties purchased by first-home buyers is the highest in Australian history. So unless we're going to gift existing tenants a home and say, you don't need to rent anymore, we're just going to give you an asset worth, you make up your own number, 800 grand. We're just going to give it to you. Well, that's not going to happen, right? So where's the rental supply going to come from, mate? There is no other option, is there?
Well, there isn't, but I also know from what I'm seeing around the country, many investors are looking to sell out, as you mentioned, and not buy again, and they feel battered and not encouraged. So what are you sort of seeing on the ground with that? Are you seeing that to be
that's definitely happening, and that is why a boom is inevitable. Absolutely inevitable, because we are talking about something that is essential. Second to water, there is nothing more important to human beings than the roof over their head. So I've just been through the options to address this and to get people out of cars.
Not a real option. They're getting out.
So
houses, we still need to come up with a supply, even if you went around and gifted free houses.
The only ones with the money are the everyday Aussie investor. So it's inevitable for the people who caused the crisis are going to, clearly they don't want to do what they need to do, otherwise they would have already done it, right? But inevitably they're going to go, geez, if we actually don't do what we need to do, we won't get re-elected.
Yeah.
Because there's more and more people in cars, right? So
forces decision.
Yeah. So eventually they'll go, I don't know what those decisions will be, but they could put some pressure on APRA and say, APRA have gone too heavy with credit policy for investors. The way they assess an investor's loan is ridiculous. Maybe we should cut some slack there. State governments might say, let's look at the stamp duty we charge investors. Let's put some initiatives there. City councils might say, there's a lot of city councils around Australia that charge an investor a higher a premium on their council rates because they don't live in it themselves. Because it's, which is, you think about that, that's surely lawful. Like, it's not like a tenant causes more cost to the city council than an owner-occupier would.
Yeah. So you can already see that Queensland dabbled in trying to change their proposed land tax, and thankfully that was repealed, but you never know. Like, I just got my land tax bill for WA here, and I just paid off a big amount to our state government, and it makes me think too about, do I keep buying more properties here or spread them out to reduce it and change up my entity names and other things, that all become obstacles when they're added up.
Yeah. But those levers there, I think I've added up 4, they're the sort of levers that governments need to pull to encourage greater participation rates of the everyday Aussie property investor. And that's the only thing that will fix this rental crisis. Now, when that happens, I don't know. I'm not those 3 levels of governments, but there is no alternative.
So when rents are only going to keep going up.
Do that
in the meantime, aren't they?
Correct. There's a segment of politicians that go, well, let's pass some legislation to restrict a landlord's ability to increase rent. You know what that will do? The same thing that's caused this crisis. Someone who owns an asset, has taken the risk and paid all the taxes and got the interest bill to pay, is then told that there's a limit on the income they can earn in that asset. Well, some of those existing providers of rental accommodation are going to say, I'm selling. Then we're back to creating a bigger problem than what we've already got, right? So the only thing that will fix it is to encourage greater participation rates of property investment, and anything that creates a higher volume of buyers, whether those buyers are investors, first home buyers, owner-occupier buyers, whatever. When you create more buyers, you create competition, and competition causes price growth.
Yeah.
So the boom is inevitable. Also, we look at the underlying, forget rental for a minute, Jared, we look at the underlying fundamentals of the property markets. I won't say everywhere in Australia, but large parts of Australia. The number of properties listed for sale today is among the lowest it's ever seen. We just spoke about rent. Our national economy, we've got the lowest unemployment rate since 1974, so we're talking 50 years. We've got 500,000 jobs advertised today that Australia can't fill.
Vacancy rates, yeah.
We've got pressure now building on wages. So these are all good things for property markets, right?
We've also got, migration levels, yeah.
Yep. So this financial year alone, state and federal government combined anticipate 700,000 foreigners will move to Australia and will need accommodation. 700,000. So about 500,000 of those will be international students, and the other 200,000 will be permanent residents to fill some of those jobs. That's 1 year.
I believe they have over 2 million applications too that they received in 2 or 3 months.
So we've been talking about the rental crisis and our existing population is living in cars, and now we're pulling through to bring.
It's almost irresponsible, isn't it, to open up the gates and let more people in when we don't have a plan, or at least I'm not aware of a clear plan from the government. Are you?
Yeah. No. So this is what. So the fundamentals are really strong. The commentary that everyone reads is associated with inflation and interest rate. All that's doing with property markets is affecting feelings, uncertainty in buyers' minds. So buyers, there's actually lots of people who are cashed up, but they're not prepared to act on that being cashed up because the rubbish in their device.
Just missing confidence.
Yeah. Now, confidence is something that can be changed with the flick of a switch. Let's picture this scenario. I'm not saying this will happen, but I think it's possible. We could be 2 months into the new calendar year, and those 2 months the RBA has announced we've kept rates on hold this month. It could be as simple as 2 consecutive months of the RBA doing nothing for enough members of the Australian public to say, we're pretty confident that the RBA has pretty much reached its ceiling. That's all we needed to have confidence. A lot of existing homeowners around Australia, their home today is worth 50% more than what it was 3 years ago. 5 out of 8 capital cities have had 50% or more capital growth in the last 3 years. So equity is there. The RBA, so the existing households have $260 billion cash in offset accounts and redraws. So they are flush with cash, but they're sitting on their hands because the media commentary is negative. If that piece is fixed, well, not if it will, but when, who knows?
Yep.
It could be as early as the first half of next year when confidence returns, and then we could see a lot of pressure on property markets within a short period of time.
I guess we've got that sort of window between now and then where if you can look at the fundamentals, if it does make sense for your situation and you don't compromise on the type of asset that you're buying, then it makes sense to get in before you do have more competition and everyone's coming to the party later.
Spot on. Property investors tend to behave more like sheep. They all follow each other. But more often than not, because they're following each other, they end up in the same paddock. But if you ignore what others are saying and take an objective assessment of the characteristics that influence property markets, when you do it, as I tried to summarise earlier, you sort of go, yeah, they're actually really good. You're right. The proof is that the economy's never been better. We have just opened up the international border. We don't have any rental accommodation. We don't have enough properties listed for sale. We do have an all-time record high investment in infrastructure. Those things are all good. Those things create booms. The only thing missing to flick the switch on that boom is the confidence piece, which could happen really quickly.
So do you think that it's going to solve itself without some government incentives? I guess time will tell, won't it? Because they all seem to just be waiting and seeing, and the rental crisis is only getting worse. So
I think everything that's important in life does solve itself eventually.
Markets correct and cater if there's enough of a need.
But intervention, if the issue's big enough, intervention, the right intervention, I guess fixes things up than if you just let things take their natural course. Now we're talking about something I think, I said earlier, the second most important thing to all humans. Yeah, sure. If governments don't intervene, will this fix itself? Yes, it will, but it will take a long time. It could say, what's a long time? 7, 8, 9 years. It took that long to create it. And for as long as we don't leave it alone and don't intervene in terms of government intervention, as long as we don't do that, the problem's going to get worse because of more landlords selling, reducing the size of the rental pool, overseas migrants coming in, meaning more rental. So I spent a long time thinking about what does that look like, and what the crystal ball shows me is not an Australia that I know. I'm talking civil war.
Yeah, well,
if it's left unaddressed,
when the divide is too big, people have no choice.
Yeah, if you are a good citizen and you're forced out of a home because the landlord told you you've got nowhere else to live other than that car or that tent, but it's not just you, it's hundreds of thousands. You tell me, what would you do? No, I don't encourage violence at all. But I'm just saying, what would it look like if they don't intervene? Well, I've tried to think about that, and I don't like what I see.
Hopefully, between there's many solutions and places between that worst case and now, but it's the gap's closing, isn't it? So
There is no quick fix, though. I promise you that. Like, housing is not just something that appears overnight. Even if the right policies are pulled, even if someone sort of said, here's a bunch
We've got our
of
supply challenges, of course, still too, which, can't just get houses built out of the ground.
And who's going to fund them?
Huge price.
Who's going to fund them? We know governments aren't going to fund them. So there is no quick fix. The pressure that's already on rents is going to get a lot more before we see any relaxation on that rental pressure. Which, if you're the investor, that's good for your cash flow. If you're the tenant, that's not what you want to hear.
Yeah. Well, thank you for pulling apart many of the variables. It does help us just, see what's actually happening and see what the underlying fundamentals are. And I guess coming back to our opportunity as investors ourselves, if we can take action, there should be pretty good prospects ahead for us all.
I honestly have not seen better property market fundamentals in my lifetime.
Yep.
Now, some people hear that and go, what is this like smoking? Like, everything else I read and have read throughout the entire 2022 calendar year has said the complete opposite of that. Well, you answer your own question. I've read it off the facts today. You go, revisit those, reflect on those, and see if you see lots of stormy waters or whether they are, in fact, ingredients for good things to happen.
Great place to leave it. Thanks, Simon. I really appreciate your time.
Good on you. Thanks, Jared.
Just a reminder that the information discussed in this podcast is general in nature, as we don't know your specific situation. You should always seek professional advice before taking any action. For free market reports on your suburbs of interest and other helpful resources to grow your wealth, make sure you join my property investor update at investorsedge.com.au/join. And finally, make sure you're a member of our Perth Property Investment Facebook group to be part of the conversation with other like-minded investors, get help to your questions, and get a feel for what's going on out there in the market. I'll see you in the group.